Welcome, friends or random viewers who are just curious. I'm Amara. I've been thinking about making a video for a while. I think the usual things, fear of feedback, or people simply not caring and me shouting out into the void, or me trying this and my health taking a nosedive and having to face that with brutal honesty. All of it kept me from trying this, but I want to record where I am now, because whether or not my health improves in the future, or if I take a big step back, it will be good, one, to have a record for myself, and for people to see that this health thing, it's always in flux. It might feel like we're stuck, that it never changes, but it does. Not always for the good, but it changes. My background is fairly extensive. I was enjoying a rare snow day in my hometown in Tennessee, and I got out there before anyone else in my excitement. I'm the youngest in the family, and I just couldn't contain how happy I was. I was 11, and I wanted to get out there first. I wanted to break the snow. The sound of snow crunching is one of my favorite sounds in the world, and I wanted to hear that clean, crisp crunch. But I fell. I tripped over my dog, and it doesn't seem like a big thing, but it was. I saw my family through the French doors, and I saw that they could tell I was hurt, and I tried to walk to the back door and open it, and I didn't realize I was passing out until I was too weak to turn the handle, and then my knee cracked onto the brick of the step, and the door swung open, and my father, who was an internist at that point, he had been the head of the ER at one point in his career. Before that, he opened the door and he swept me up very carefully, and he deposited me on the sofa, and I blacked out. And I think it was just a couple of seconds, because when I woke up, my mother was trying to rush toward me to make sure I was okay. And I remember hearing my dad say in this voice that I had never heard him use, "No, Lisa, you have to stay back. You can't touch her. I have to examine her. I have to check her spine." And that's when I knew that maybe it wasn't just as simple as a slip and fall. My brother was hovering. He's 3 years older and very protective to this day, and he didn't know what to do. He didn't want to cause trouble, but he wanted to be as close as he could be. And that day, everything changed. It set off a chain reaction that reverberates through to this day. For a long time, its repercussions completely ruled my life. Because my mother had lupus and fibromyalgia, and my dad was a doctor, I was extremely lucky. I wasn't one of the people that went through, on average, a decade of not being diagnosed or being misdiagnosed. Within 6 months, it was apparent that I was having symptoms of fibromyalgia. At first, we thought she broke her tailbone, she shocked her spine, it's going to take a minute to heal up, she's going to feel achy. Then it was, well, she used to do cheerleading before the accident, so maybe it's the lack of activity that's making her sore. And then it was, well, now she's back at cheerleading and the activity is making her sore. And I was going to sleep wrapped in ace bandages. And then I started having pain in my legs, and then they were wrapped. And then I would have heating pads, and I was like a starfish, basically. And we realized something else was going on. This wasn't going away, it wasn't changing, and it was stubborn. I was also getting very fatigued. I wasn't able to function normally. And although I have a great relationship with my parents, for some reason, I guess I didn't want to let them down, but I didn't tell them that I was going upstairs and taking naps. I'd say I was studying, and I might for a minute, but I'd be so tired. And then I'd come down for dinner, and then I'd go upstairs again, and I would sleep. Then I would come downstairs, and I would tell my parents goodnight, and then I would go to sleep, hit snooze on my alarm clock a couple times, and drag myself to school and hardly stay awake, except for the times that I was in enough pain that the adrenaline kept me going. So I fessed up finally, and I got a diagnosis. I got a second opinion, same diagnosis. And I remember asking the doctor, I was like, what do I do? I'm ready to fight this thing. I'm ready to knock it flat and get back to normal. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I had heard of stories of kids being sick and having to go through tests and procedures and it being uncomfortable or even horrible, and I thought maybe it was one of those things. And I was down for that, to get back to normal. And my doctor glanced at my dad really quickly, and then she said, "This isn't the kind of thing that you beat. You're going to be dealing with this for the rest of your life." I had had a pretty good childhood until that moment. My parents were high school sweethearts. Met when my mom was 14. She saw dad, and he was like kind of in a band playing music, and she went home and she told her mom, "I met the man I'm going to marry." And she was like, "Yeah, sure." Well, when they were 19, she got married. They never looked back until my mom's dying day. They were confused for newlyweds because they were so into each other. So I had that wonderful example, and they were kind and warm and loving, and my brother was protective and wonderful. So I was lucky. For 11 years, I was really lucky. I had a great childhood. But it did definitely end abruptly the day that I was diagnosed. And I never got back to normal. I'm still not normal. I've made incredible progress, but I am not a healthy person. It's a struggle. And that's why I think this matters. Because I know in my head the stat that there are so many people who experience chronic pain in one form or another that if just us lived in a country, it would be more densely populated than China. So that's a lot of people, but it's a really isolating situation. And you feel like a freak, especially as a kid. The other kids aren't equipped to deal with this kind of serious health situation. And I don't blame them for reacting the way that they did. The ones that were not my fans would casually, commonly say things like, I wish my dad was a doctor so he could invent or make up a fake illness so I could get out of school. You're so lucky. And then the ones that were my friends hung in there. Some longer than others, but they hung in there as long as they could. But I started taking medication, and specifically Lyrica made me so foggy mentally, so fuzzy. I couldn't remember conversations, entire conversations. I couldn't keep up with the gossip. I didn't know who was dating whom, who had a crush on whom, who hated what teacher, and for a while I felt really guilty because people would call and ask if they could talk to me, and my mom would usually have to tell them that I was having a bad day and I was resting, or that I had a migraine and I couldn't handle a conversation. And then she didn't have to do that because the calls stopped coming. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who've had this happen. It takes rare stuff to see chronic pain change someone and just roll with it. So now I understand, but as a kid, that was hard. Then there were the teachers. I had been one of those nerdy, inadvertent teacher's pets because I was just so curious. I was always wondering why things worked the way they did. I wanted more information. I wanted to expound on things we talked about. I wasn't quite the kid who would be like, hey, you didn't assign us homework. But, you know, I really enjoyed the classroom atmosphere. And I had to stop going. We tried every other day, and we tried half days in the afternoon so I could sleep in the mornings. And it didn't work. By the time I was 14, I think, I had to be homebound. I was still associated with the county school system, but I couldn't physically go. So a teacher came to my house for up to 3 hours a week and would proctor tests and give out homework. But the stuff I needed help with, they usually couldn't help. I took Spanish, for instance, and my homebound teacher had learned French. When she was giving me an oral exam, she couldn't even pronounce the word I was supposed to spell. Or math, I needed help with. None of them could do math. So from 14 on, I was pretty much on my own academically. That was pretty stressful. At the end, I was so far behind in my studies because I had gotten pneumonia that even my homebound teacher was like, just get a GED. And I thought, no, I have fought so hard for so many years. I've dealt with teachers treating me like trash. And I get that it's not fun to have to make up extra assignments because they insisted, since I wasn't there to participate and have participation grades, that they should give me other assignments for every single day, which ended up giving me about an hour and a half extra homework that was just busy work, sentence diagramming, or just sheets of math problems. It per class every week, an extra hour and a half, because I wasn't there to raise my hand. I'm still upset about that one. So all of that added with my actual assignments, I barely squeaked through. And I thought, I could get a GED, but I have fought like hell. I am so close. So I worked through it, and I squeaked by, and I graduated. And I couldn't walk the line. And I was so exhausted by my efforts that my health kind of started another tailspin. My leg pain got worse. I started using a recumbent bike up to 3 hours a day to keep the pain kind of at bay. It felt like, well, it was a muscle spasm to begin with. It felt like a butcher block, my thighs, and the tops of my thighs specifically. And it felt kind of like bees stinging me. And it made it hard to sleep. So I developed insomnia. Despite now being on muscle relaxers. And then I started having back pain as I developed. I'm from a very chesty family, and that did not help situations. The back pain became horrible. I slept in a heating pad every night. So I couldn't go to college at that point. And we tried different treatments. We tried different things. I tried different diets. I tried different procedures. There was this one thing that they thought might be the next big thing, where they put, not an electrode exactly, but a little instrument behind your ear. And they have little needles, 5 needles that go into your skin to stimulate the nerve, to hopefully block out pain signals going to the brain. Yeah. What would happen is you would get it installed, and it would start clicking. And it would do that for, I think, 2 or 4 hours, and then it would stop suddenly. And then all of a sudden it would start up again. So whatever you're doing, you go. But the brain is weird, because you'd have it on for a week, and you couldn't shower because the adhesive would come off. But after a while, you would not notice when it started clicking. Your brain learned to shut it out. And there were mixed results in trials, and it didn't help me. It didn't help my mom when she was able to access it. And it was another situation where it just failed. It was hard. It was the hardest defeat since Lyrica didn't work. We'd figured out Lyrica would, in theory, help fibromyalgia before it was labeled for that usage by the FDA. So as soon as it was, we were off to the races, but they just kept increasing the dosage and increasing the dosage. And I got to the point where I couldn't subtract 9 from 17, and I would just stare at the problem until I started crying. Because I'm not unintelligent, And it was really scary as a teenager to see my brain just completely going down the toilet. Not having friends anymore, not being able to get out anymore, not being able to sleep, being in pain. And now the one thing that I relied on, the one thing that made me proud, that I always thought I could rely on, was my brain. And that's what was happening to it. It was like I saw it just shattering in slow motion in front of me. So I went up to, I think, 300 and something milligrams. It was an insane dose. I was also on nerve pain medicine and the muscle relaxers, and I was foggy and exhausted and in so much pain. So my parents went to the guy who wrote the book on pediatric fibromyalgia, and he said he had a program he thought would work. The idea was to fray the nerves by overstimulating the brain and exposing it to higher than average amounts of activity and stimuli for a long enough period that becomes the new baseline. So when that activity stops, you don't really have as much pain because the brain has become accustomed to this new baseline. In theory, that works. He liked to do it inpatient because he wanted patients to not have any pain medication, including Tylenol, and the kids would be in so much pain that their parents would slip them medicine, even Tylenol, and he thought that would impact the results enough to invalidate everything the kid was doing. So he liked to separate the kids from their parents for about a month to 2 months for an inpatient version of this. My parents weren't down with that. So we implemented a version in my hometown, and I did it. And it was about 8 hours a day of physical therapy. I had 15 minutes to eat lunch. And between each I went from exercise to exercise. And if I really needed it, I could ask for a 15-second break or a 30-second break. And other than that, I was exercising. So I got super buff. My wonderful brother likened my legs to tree trunks at one point, between all the biking I was doing and now all this. Even years later, if I went to the gym, there was a period of time where I tried doing the gym thing by myself, and like a guy would get off the machine and I'd go over and he'd be like, "Oh no, remember you gotta change the weights." I'm like, "Oh yeah," and he's like, "How much do you want me to take off?" And I'd look at it and I'd be like, "Would you add another 20? And he'd look at me and he's like, "Hey, sweetie, you don't have anything to prove." I know. All right. And then I'd do it and he'd just be freaked out and skulk off into a corner. So I retained it pretty well, but I did have tree trunk legs, and in effect, it didn't work. Yet another failure. My pain improved slightly, my sleep improved slightly, but I had another bout with pneumonia, and by the time I got better, I just By the time I got better, I was exactly where I had been. Again, it was difficult. Then we get into the phase where my migraines kicked in. It got worse. I started getting migraines. No idea why. Maybe hormonal, not sure. But I had pretty severe migraines about half of the time. I would spend most of my time in my room with the windows blacked out because the house we lived in had like a whole wall that was windows, and like we couldn't block them. So it wasn't really safe for me to come out because I was very light sensitive. It could trigger a migraine like that. Before it was over, just being outside on a rainy, overcast day for about 5 minutes with sunglasses was enough to spark a migraine. I couldn't be in the light at all. We joked that I was a vampire. So they started slowly, but they ramped up, and eventually it was 2 weeks out of the month that I was in the dark. Blacked out room. I'd be listening to an audiobook on the lowest setting, and that was still too loud. It hurt to take showers because the water on my skin, it was like little bullets. I was so sensitive. I was so sensitized. It was like every nerve was just exposed. And my mom would wait until it was dark. So in summer until 9:30. And we would meet at the bottom of the stairs, and I would give her the previous night's dish, and she would give me a plate from dinner. And in whispered tones, we would have a conversation about what had gone on that day. And that's how I got my information about the outside world, on and off for about 4 years. I started reciting poetry in the dark when I had those migraines because my voice started getting really gravelly and hoarse. And my mom asked me what was wrong, if I thought I was getting sick. And I finally realized, oh, it's because I don't speak. I was losing my voice. I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I didn't have any opportunity to speak, and doing so was painful. But it hurt her when she realized that. And I didn't want her to suffer that for me. And I memorized poems because I am that nerd, and I used them. I used them to keep my voice just in enough use that it wouldn't make her sad, so that I could keep up a bit of a front when I would get that one hot meal a day. It's hard to talk about her because she suffered with this. She showed me the way. She had been ill since before I was born, but her pregnancy with me is what really cemented it for her. And she suffered. And we met at the bottom of the stairs because she couldn't climb them. But she was amazing. She was at one point an on-air reporter she was the lead investigative reporter that helped bring down the mayor who was involved in an illegal gambling ring. So that's pretty cool. And she went from getting small batches of jewelry to flipping that and making a profit until she had enough for a kiosk at a mall. Then she started a tanning salon. Then she started a shoe store, then a Hallmark store, then a Hallmark Gold Crown store. And she was helping raise us. Depending on what Dad was doing at the time work-wise, she had us until like 8 p.m. after she got home from work running the business while she had lupus and fibromyalgia. And I still don't understand how she did it. I mean, she collapsed on the weekends, but her willpower, I thought, when I get older, I'll just grow into it. No, she just had something special. And I was lucky again in that, because I grew up with pain under my roof. I grew up with my mom not being able to button up my dress because her hands were too stiff to work. And to make it not scary for me, she would say, "Oh, I'm like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz, and I just need my oil can. Once I get my oil can, I'll be okay." And I would remind her, I'd be like, "Don't forget your oil can." She'd be like, "Okay, sweetie." We'd go off to school and she'd go back to bed. She died from cancer a year and a half ago. And that's why it's hard. Because usually when your mom has cancer, you tell your best friend. That's complicated when your mom is your best friend. But what was important is, though she was very sick, she inspired me to keep trying, keep fighting, look for new solutions, look for new medicine, look for new dietary options, look for new treatments. I didn't sink into learned helplessness, which I think is what gets so many of us. We've been sick for 5 years, 10 years, 13 years, 18 years, and we just stop fighting, we stop trying, we stop looking. We think we've done everything, but because we're not on top of it, we don't realize there's new stuff out there. There's a study recently that showed that 1 Tylenol and 1 Advil together is more effective, more potent than 10 milligrams of morphine. That's important to know, especially if you're trying to get off of pain medication. Narcotics, I should say. I started the journey with narcotics when I was 17, I think. My parents saw how much pain I was in and that I was kind of cratering, and they couldn't stand it anymore. And so we tried, small doses, breakthrough medication when needed. And over the years, I had to take more and more and more. I'm sure a lot of you know how it goes. In my case, I got up to 150 micrograms per hour of fentanyl plus short-acting hydromorphone, 10 milligram pills, I think 3 a day. That's a lot. Usually, so for reference, for people who aren't on pain medication, if you have surgery, like with anesthesia, you have stitches, scarring, you'll get around 100 micrograms. Like, they cut you open and they give you 100 micrograms of fentanyl to cover it right post-op. If fentanyl is what they're doing at that hospital. And I was on that for, I mean, it took a long time to get there, but I was on that for about 3 or 4 years. And it took 3 years to come off of pain medication. And I did it because we'd recently found treatment for my migraines. About 40 Botox injections in my head and neck every 4 months. And there's that 1 month at the end where it kind of wears off, and it's the danger month. But I was starting to be able to get out a little bit more. I was training my eyes so I could be outside a little bit more. And this is when I discovered I developed a sun allergy. And anytime I'm out for more than 5 minutes in bright sunlight, or, longer if it's cloudy, I break out in a rash that lasts for days and is extremely uncomfortable, keeps me awake. I cannot sleep. I've injured myself scratching. I had to cut my nails completely because I was injuring my skin from scratching. But this was improvement because I was able to go outside. And I thought, at that point I was about 25, 26, and I thought, I want to have kids one day. I cannot do that on this kind of medication. And I can't do a quick taper. I'm scared of not having my meds. I am scared of being in pain and knowing I don't have the arsenal to hold that pain down to a level that I can handle. And of course, all this made me very anxious. All this inability to control my life, control my pain, feeling horrible about myself because I felt like I should be able to do something about it. I had anxiety. I was on anxiety medication. And I thought, these things I can't be on if I want to be a mom. I'm going to start with the pain medication because I feel like I'm going to be pretty anxious while I'm getting off of it. Turns out that was a good move. Then I got off of the pain medication. And then I had the surgery that changed my life. It actually worked. My back pain got better. The recovery was difficult. My husband's mother is a nurse, and at that point in time, he was my fiance, and she came up and she helped take care of me while I improved. But it was rough, and I had to be back on pain medication to handle the surgical pain. But I was able to get off of it in about 3.5 months as opposed to 3 years because of my experience. The reason my mother-in-law helped me was that my mom had died 6 months prior, and there wasn't someone who could help. Around this time is when I met my wonderful husband. It's when I met my wonderful husband, and even though she only got to meet him twice, my mom did get to meet him, and he was the only boyfriend of mine that she approved of. And I didn't even look for so long because I thought, I'm not in a space where I can contribute to a relationship. I can't go out on dates. I mean, I'm not going to remember conversations. It wasn't the right time. But when my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and I saw how worried she was about me, I wanted to help. And the only thing I could do was help her feel better about my prospects. I wanted her to know that I wouldn't be alone, that at least I had someone on the horizon who might work out. So I thought, okay, fine. I've been single for years. I hate doing this. I hate going online. I'll try it. I'll do it for a week, and then I'll wait 3 months and just spend time with her, and then I'll try it another week. On the third day, he found my profile, and he liked a picture of me in his stupid Viking hat. That was my tip off, because as a coping mechanism, I have some pretty weird habits. I'm a pretty quirky gal. And if I keep making videos, you're probably gonna see that. I'm weird, and I needed someone who could be down with that. So the fact that he went for the goofy photo, that was good. That was ideal. So instead of making him wait for about 3 months to give him my phone number, I went ahead and felt comfortable enough to talk to him after only 3 days, I think. And then instead of waiting maybe 4 months to meet him, I met him within a month. I had unfinished dental work. Because of the opiate use, I had a lot of cavities. I had dry mouth, and it was horrible. I had to have a lot of root canals. It was horrible. And I also have Sjogren's, which causes dry mouth, dry eyes, dry everything. So I was kind of doomed. Even if I didn't have the opiate use and, the muscle relaxers that cause dry mouth and all the medication, I was probably going to have issues with my teeth. But it was hard to be, 21 and have the dental hygienist come in and give me a demonstration on how to brush my teeth, because they just assumed I wasn't, because of the rate of decay. And so I said to my husband, I was like, I want to meet you, but I'm nervous because I'd hope to have this dental work done, and I don't want your first impression of me to be that. I'm embarrassed about it. It doesn't reflect who I imagine myself to be or how I look. And, I'm self-conscious. And he said, "You are so much more to me than your teeth." And the miracle is that I believed him. And he meant it. He didn't run away screaming for the hills. We met, and he was so tall. He's over a foot taller than me. And we went to a bookstore, because we're nerds like that. Again. And within 10 minutes, I was not really nervous. It felt more like falling back in step with an old friend than meeting someone. And he's been by my side ever since, and I could tell him anything. And he has seen what this does to someone. He's seen the pain. He's seen the bad days. He's seen all the hard times and the sad times and the ugliness and how difficult it is, especially when the bad days stack on top of each other and you realize you only get one good day out of every 3 months. But I got to spend that one good day with him, and that changed everything. I had a fire lit under me when my mom was diagnosed because I wanted her to see me improving so she wouldn't worry. But now it was also accelerating because I wanted to go on adventures with him. I wanted to be able to be in an equal partnership with him, at least as much as I was able. And I couldn't go for it if I was completely stuck and bedbound. And most of the time I was. I couldn't stand up for more than about 10 minutes without having to have a heavy-duty back brace. I slept in heating pads, of course. And if I moved in the slightest wrong way, I wouldn't be able to stand up straight for about 3 days. So it made me afraid of any movement. And then, of course, my back would lock up because I wasn't doing anything and the muscles were stagnant and not happy at not being moved. He pushed me to move. And that, combined with his presence, has maybe saved my life. Because I went from that state to being able to dance at my wedding. It took surgery and it took physical therapy. And it took getting off my pain medication, which sounds weird because it's like, won't you have more pain? But over time, your brain changes. And I'm going to make a video about this, but your brain interprets pain signals differently. And the pain signals that do get through when you take pain medication become kind of amplified. And your brain kind of freaks out about what's there. It's sort of like, I'm not actually supposed to be feeling anything. I am. Wow. And it overreacts, basically, in layman's terms. I was in this feedback loop. So it was causing more sensitization. So I was having more pain. So I took more pain medicine to deal with that pain, but that caused more sensitization, which caused more pain. So I had to break that loop, and then I had to feel the pain without any pain medicine while my brain rewired itself. And it's still in that process. Next March will be a year from when I stopped having to take pain medication regularly and being dependent on it, physically dependent. So I'm still in the process of my brain calming down and not setting off these flares anytime something happens. But I can tell that it's calming down. And hopefully I'll make a video about that, my journey in how I react to pain, how my brain reacts to pain, and how my body reacts to pain, and how that's changed. And I've experienced that twice. because of me getting off of the pain medication 2 times, and it was different each time. So I was able to get off pain medication. I was able to stand upright. I gained 1/2 an inch in height at 31 years old. Who would have thought? You don't usually gain height at this age, you know? But I did, because I had never been able to stand up straight because of my back pain. So it was really transformative. I was able to dance at my wedding. Not a lot of songs, but enough. And I was able to go to Scotland for our honeymoon. We had a wonderful hand fasting, and there was an owl involved. We got to stay in this great castle that had a library. My parents had saved all the money from all the parties that I never got to have growing up. Sweet 16, 18th, 21st, 25th, 30th. And they thought I was due for a party, and I finally had something to celebrate. My mom had passed, and that was hard. And it was hard to have her not see me make progress. She always believed my health would get better, that it would improve, and I wouldn't always be stuck in my room, that something would happen, or a series of events would happen, or some medication would come out, or some therapy invented that would change things for me, that I would find my way to it, and I would get through it, and have, at least somewhat of a normal life. And she didn't get to see it. And that's hard. But I know she'd be very proud that I kept fighting and I kept looking. Because she knew the draw of learned helplessness. She knew how hard it is to try for years and everything not work. And doctors not treat you with respect, or assume that you're an addict, or assume that you are being dramatic, or difficult when you try several medications and none of them work, or they have side effects so you can't take them. She knew how hard it is. So I believe that in equal measure she would be thrilled to see where I am. And like I said at the beginning of this very long video, I'm not normal yet, and I don't know if I ever will be. I still can't walk very far. I had to relearn how to walk, and I'm still working on that. My gait isn't right, and I have curvature of the spine because of how I've had to sort of hold my posture over the years, relying on ligaments rather than muscles to stay upright. I still have the migraines, and I still have back pain. I still have pain in my legs. I still have nerve pain. I still have insomnia. I still have anxiety, and I still have depression. And I'm going to keep fighting them, and I'm going to keep finding ways. This year, for the first time in 7 years, I'm attempting college. And I started with 1 class, and I'm doing really well. So far, I have an A. knock on wood. And next semester, I'm thinking of going up to 3 classes, 2 in person and 1 online, or 2 online and 1 in person, depending on what's available. And I'm excited because I've always thought I was meant for more than living a life in my room. That I had something to offer, something to give. Right now I'm studying social work, and I'm hoping in my post-grad to make the switch to psychology to practice with my brother, who is a practicing psychologist, and we're all very, very proud. And I want to work with people who are in pain, because I've been there. I am there. They've got my empathy, but I'm also not going to mince words. Learned helplessness is a horrible, horrible thing. It is a beast that creeps into your life and slowly starts to strangle you, and you have no idea what's happening until you are on the floor and out of air and everything is going dark and you just wonder what the hell happened. I want to help, and I'm in the process of getting better for me and for my husband, and hopefully so I can be a mother in a couple of years. And so when I graduate, I can help other people. This is me wanting to document where I am and where I'm going. I have a couple of videos from before now that I might edit and post in some way, back when things were, I didn't have a lot of reason to hope they would get better. But mostly all I can do is start documenting from here on in shorter videos. And I don't know, maybe it's silly sitting down and doing this. I don't know why someone would watch a really long video from someone that they don't know, but I wanted to give it a try. I know there's so many out there that are like me in this pain nation of people, and maybe if you're in that situation, you took something from this that was of value. I certainly hope I didn't waste your time. But regardless, you'll be hearing more from me. Or not, depending. But if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Regardless of your health, I hope that you are as healthy and as happy as you can be, that your quality of life is at a place that you can at least tread water and keep swimming, keep searching. Because for me, it took 18 years. I didn't think it was going to get better. I didn't think I was going to get out. But if I'm lucky, that's exactly what you're watching. Have a good day.